Now lock in, now laser focus.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of Locked In. My name is Megan Holden.
And I'm Sam Rodriguez.
And here we cover the latest and hottest NFL, NBA, and Creighton Young Minds Undiscovered League duo. Sam's dog's trying to compete with me. And for those who don't know, the Creighton Young Minds Undiscovered League is the first Tropica basketball training and development in the USA. They take talent from all across the nation and compete at the highest level, from former NBA players to G Leaguers to college players. Check it out. You guys can check it out usually on the weekends. Right now, they are going through some things because they are based in Texas, so we will keep you updated. But for our topics for today we are talking about the top NFL 5 wide receiver free agents. We are sick of QB talk. We're focused on wide receivers right now. And then we're also going to be getting into the NBA trade deadline, which is coming up pretty soon. Which team needs to make the move the most? But first, we have a very special guest today. Sam, can you tell us more about our special guest?
All right, so he is a former NFL tackle for the Panthers and Texans, drafted in 2006 in the 3rd round. We have Mr. Rashad Butler.
Oh.
Megan, what'd you do?
My bad. There we go. Hey, wait. Focus. There we are.
You guys got me? Okay, I'm here.
There we go.
There we go. Technical difficulties. All right. Thank you for coming on our show today, Mr. Butler. We appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
So, now, before we get into debates, I gotta know where Alliance stands. All right.
Okay.
So, what NFL teams were you watching going into this last season, and also what NBA teams you're a fan of?
Okay, so usually I'm not really a fan per se of NFL teams, but for the past 3 years, I've been working in the South Florida market, sports radio. So I guess the team I've been following very closely, because I have to, are the Miami Dolphins. But I'm not trying to sit here and say that my allegiance is toward the Miami Dolphins. But I will say, since Brian Flores has come over, I have grown somewhat fond of what he's been able to do with that team thus far.
I loved him in New England. I thought he was a lot better defensive coordinator than Matt Patricia.
Yeah.
I'm sad that he left. But I'm rooting for him in Miami. He looks like he's got a great thing going on over there, especially with just the team chemistry and defensively. What he's doing with the guys, bringing it versatile, knowing how to play players, put them in the best spots to succeed. Definitely an upcoming team. It's gonna be scary now. Finally, in the AFC East with Buffalo. And Miami, and we'll see what happens with New England. I kind of don't want to touch on that right now as a Patriots fan. But first, let's get to our topic. I want to focus on the NBA first.
Okay, sounds good.
So the NBA trade deadline's coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And this season's a little wonky, right? There's no clear dominant team this season. It could be because of short turnaround. But given that, what team do you think needs to make a trade the most to push them over the edge when they go to the playoffs?
Okay, I'll give you one team from each conference. Now, if you would ask, if you would have asked me this question a week ago in the East, I would have said a team that I know quite well and a team I root for, the Miami Heat. But it seems like now the Miami Heat have been able to catch, I guess, their stride at the right time, because they're winners, I think, of 5 or 6 straight now. So I think they've been able to get back a player like Goran Dragic, and Jimmy Butler now has seemed to kind of get back into the swing of things. So I think this team is gelling at the right time. But now I think a team that you guys know quite well in your region is the Celtics. The Celtics is a team where I expected so much from this team, just, the continuity that they have for the last, something odd years since Brad Stevens, has got there. So I think that's a team that they have Tatum, they have Brown, they have Kemba Walker. I think if they're able to get one player, because I think Gordon Hayward moving on to the Charlotte Hornets, I really think that hurt them, and you're starting to see that right now. So I think if they can get one player to really fill that void, and I think that that could be a team like Miami that can be contending with the Bucks, with the 76ers, and those teams that are at the top of the East. In the West, this may be surprising for a lot of people to hear, but I'm going to say, even though they sit number one, I still think the Utah Jazz, they need one more player, because I think when it gets down to the nitty-gritty in the playoffs, I don't like their chances in a 7-game series against either the Clippers or the Lakers. So I think if they can get one more player, I think that will increase their chances to really be a title contending team, despite, right now looking like a title contending team at number one. But I just think the NBA playoffs are a lot different than the NFL playoffs, to where you have a 7-game series, and that usually favors the better team.
And a star players show up. And there's been questions around Utah Jazz if they really have those elite players. And that's a sleeper. I didn't even think about that, to be honest. That's a nice sleeper there.
Yeah.
But it's also like, when I think about that, I struggle like who's really available, because I don't think Bradley Beal is going to get traded.
No.
I don't think Bradley Beal is going to get traded. I don't buy that Levine's going to get traded. But also there's someone in the comments who agrees with you. Boston needs to make a deal. And he also says Denver also is a sleeper. Denver has not looked they're not as good as what they look like last season. They're kind of falling up. But Joker's having an MVP type year. But there's like kind of a missing piece there. I'm not sure. I don't think Grant was that big of a subtraction to do that. But there's something missing there. Something's not right. It could be because of the quick turnaround. But my play is actually someone that you said you wouldn't. My team is actually the Miami Heat.
Okay.
Because even though they have come along since Butler came back and they've become more healthy, I feel like they're still missing their like groove that they had last season. And I said that, they're not gonna have that underdog type of feel anymore, because now people know they are good enough making it to the finals. Yeah. So they can't really ride that wave. But they are 7-3 the last 10 games. They beat the Lakers. I throw that out there. They beat the Jazz, and they beat Toronto. But they've been kind of wishy-washy. They're 26 in points. They were 14 in field goal percentage, 20 from 3, which is uncharacteristic, because last season they were top 3-pointer team.
They were.
And now it's like, even though they still have Hero and Robinson, guys are not shooting like they were last season. And they're 10th in assists. They're still a top 10 defensive team, but they're not as dominant. I do think what we mentioned with the Utah Jazz could be the same thing with Miami Heat. They have a good team. They have a good roster, kind of like what Toronto was a couple years ago before Kawhi. They have a good coach, good foundation. But that star, that when it comes to the biggest stage, biggest time, is when those star players really take the team over the edge. And I feel like Miami could still use another star. And one star, that's only star that I believe that will get traded, that could get traded, is Kyle Lowry, the point guard. And I feel like that's an upgrade over Bourne. I feel like it fits well. He fits well in Miami, right? He got that grit.
I agree.
He has a defense. He can score. He's not a 3-point lights out shooter, but if you keep winning Robinson or Hero, I think you'll be okay. I think you'll be okay in that area. But I think that will push him over the edge, especially if you talk about the East, only really 76ers and Nets seem like a sure thing right now.
Correct. I agree. And
then the 76ers, even when it comes playoff time, people are always wondering, like, can they get over that hump? Can they get over the hump? How would, when you can play Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid a certain way and then make it tough for them, even though they got Seth there now, they're still not lights out from 3. Joel Embiid's a third best 3-point shooter. So you can do some things to make it hard for them. And their defense kind of got exposed with the Suns. They're still a great defensive team, but they're not dominant. So I can see, if Miami gets this, I can see them being on par with the 76ers if they get Kyle Lowry. I think they're top 3. I think it'd be a top 3 team in the East if they get Kyle Lowry. I don't know what happens to the Nets. I'm still curious if the Nets can work during playoff times, how that's going to look like. But for me, the team that can really go over the edge is Miami Heat. I think they can go to a good team, a really good team, to actually a team that has stars who can show out on the biggest stage.
Okay, see, I've heard that thrown around, and of course I like that, and I see that, or I saw that a lot of Miami Heat fans like that. But the thing is, I don't know if the Raptors are willing to do that, because I don't really know what the Raptors are, I guess, willing to get back from Miami. And at the same time, I don't know what Miami is willing to give up for that. Another player that I think makes better sense to where I think Miami won't have to give up a lot, and I don't think this team will ask for a lot, is PJ Tucker. I think PJ Tucker kind of fits that same mold that they had in Jay Crowder, who they lost to the Suns in free agency. So I think PJ Tucker kind of makes sense. Now, again, I think the home run trade, like you said, would be Kyle Lowry, but I just don't know who Miami will give Toronto to make Toronto say, you know what, we're willing to do this trade. But I think PJ Tucker makes better sense. But the thing about PJ Tucker, I think a lot of other teams are going to be vying for his services as well too, like teams out in the West. So he's going to have a tough decision to make coming up. But I think he's a player that fits the Miami Heat system really well.
Yeah, I think the Celtics will use PJ Tucker. I'm just going to use that out there. But you bring up a good point. Yeah. He is having, I mean, obviously he's not happy with the situation. He's not playing as good. And he is getting older, so there's that question mark. But I think he still brings that. He's a good 3-and-D guy. And you bring a good point. Would Miami give up what it takes to get Kyrie Irving? They wouldn't even give up Hero to get Harden. So that is a good question. And really, what is Toronto looking towards? Like, do they want to still contend? Are they gonna go straight to rebuild, force rebuild? What's their future really like? And then other teams, people brought up Celtics. I think the Celtics are like, they're that person that's beautiful on outside but ugly on inside. That's the analogy I give for them. I think their problems are more within, because they can bring another star to that team like they did previously, but I don't think that's going to fit. I think their problems are more with energy and heart, identity. I feel like last year we mentioned coaching. We mentioned obviously they have a lack of bench and need, but I'm not sure if bringing another player will just fix everything. I think it's more than that. The Lakers, I feel like, can always work out the buyout market for a big man, because some guys going to get bought out, like Cousins. Cousins is already free agent. You got Andrew Drummond's talking about buyout and Blake Griffin. So I could see them going there. Before I get to Sam, we have a comment. Miami Heat made the finals last year of the bubble, not buying them. Miami Heat, though, were a playoff team before the bubble.
They were.
And
they were
catching fire before the bubble. So I think they have one of the best coaches, and they have great continuity, great team.
That's one of the best coaches ever over there, Eric Spoelstra.
No, I agree.
Smart being hurt is an issue for Boston. Yes, it's an issue for Boston, but they were having problems when Smart was healthy as well, with consistency, finishing out game, playing for 48 minutes. But Sam, I'm interested in seeing who do you have, because I know you're not having your Lakers there. So who do you got?
All right, so my trade team is not like contenders this year. I think if they make this trade, it'll help them out. I got the Charlotte Hornets. The way LaMelo's playing right now is phenomenal. He's blowing out the Rookie of the Year category. Gordon Hayward looks pretty solid over there as well, along with Terry Rozier. That team, I feel like they need one more piece, that center piece, because they have Bismack Biyombo right now. He's not really doing great. Cody Zeller's out. I could see them getting maybe Andre Drummond, Jonas Valanciunas, or like a Miles Turner character, because any of those guys are an upgrade from Biyombo. And I feel like LaMelo next year is going to be even better than this year. The way that team meshes, they're looking really good right now. Like, they're looking like a playoff contender if they can't get this other piece. I feel like it is lack of chemistry still because they're all new. But once they get in the swing of it, I feel like they're going to be a team to compete with over there.
I think for me, I think with Charlotte, the only question, if I'm running the Charlotte Hornets, and like if I'm Michael Jordan, I'm asking myself is, clearly right now we're going to be in the play in the play-in. So if we do acquire someone, will that person now take us from the play-in position to a position that's going to be in the playoffs, or what? Because I mean, again, I agree with your opinion, because making a trade like that, it's not making that team too much better for their current season, but it can make that team a lot better for the future seasons and seasons after that. But I think right now for the future season, I think just ownership and management, if they do want to make a trade like that, have to ask themselves, right now we're going to be in that position where we're going to be playing to get in the playoffs. You know what I mean? So if we bring in someone, is that person going to get us that much over the hump that now we're not playing for those play-in positions? Because I think those play-in positions are what, like 7, 8, 9, and 10, something like that.
Yeah. So, yeah. Because they expanded it.
Correct. Yeah.
So actually, okay, I like the idea, Sam. I like the idea where you're going, but I'm not sure if I like the player, because I feel like you have a timeline. I feel like timelines exist. I feel like you have to have the right player for the right timeline. I don't think Drummond, one, you have to do a trade because I don't think Drummond goes there willingly if he gets bought out. But if you trade that, I think he also has 1 year left on his deal. Not only do you have to make sure the salary, because I think they are tight. They don't have much cap space now because after they gave Hayward that big contract, and they had to set some salary to do that. So I'm not really sure where they're at for cap space, but you have to probably get rid of some guys. And if does it fit your timeline? Drummond's on a 1 year deal, I believe. When you left, yes, you can add good vet presence, but I don't think it's like our guest said here, I don't think it's going to really take them much further. You know what I mean? I'm not sure. And also, Drummond's not really known to be a vet that really impacts the team more, or like really he's like kind of like a KG type in his ear. He's kind of like there. So I think if you get a vet, it has to be someone who, if you're talking about Ball, maybe that molds Ball, who can help Ball increase his game. So I'm not sure if that's the right vet, but I do like the idea of bringing a vet there or bringing someone that can help up these younger players. But to get to the comments before we move on, they're saying the Celtics, yes, beat the Bucks twice on a row, but I'm not sure if that means much given.
No, it doesn't mean much.
Also, the Celtics, the Bucks themselves haven't looked great either.
True.
They have been struggling as well. Especially, I was surprised with the Holiday. I thought they were going to go in the offseason. I thought they could be much better. But my thing about Boston is they haven't been healthy. They moved at a presence down low. Otherwise, I want to see them at full strength. Health is always an issue with Boston. They should be used to it by now, to be honest.
They've had no good center in the past couple of years. Tice and Tristan Thompson are not a good pair. They're both 6'9".
Yeah.
At least someone to get rebounds and play defense over there. At least 6'10", 6'11". They need someone down there.
But here's the thing. At this point, it's more than just down the middle. It's also bench. It's also hard. Even our starters are struggling. Our starters are inconsistent. I love Jason Tatum. I love Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown has been the most consistent Celtic. Jason Tatum, as we saw the other night, I'm not sure if it's because they're using him too much maybe, but he's not as consistent. Kemba Walker, as mentioned in our comments, has knee problems. So you really don't know where that's going. I feel like there's so many questions with this team. Brad Stevens is still not great with lineups.
No.
I think a lot of part of the team needs to grow, and they have not grown. They're stagnant right now. They're stagnant.
Yeah, and like you said before, they need that bench because all the starters are playing 40, 42 minutes a game, and that's why in the fourth quarter they're not there. They're playing the whole game.
Now let me ask you this question, because it seems to me that since you guys are in that area, that region, you guys know more about the Celtics and watch the Celtics more than me. What do you think is the main difference from last season to this season, as far as why we're seeing this team that I guess had so much hope last season going into the bubble and even losing to the Miami Heat in a great series to now a team that I think is 16-17 or 15-17?
Just under 500 now. Yeah. So that's a great question. I think it's multiple things. I don't think that's why they can't fix it, because it's not an easy solution. I think obviously you have the bench. They never really developed those players. The players like Grant Williams, who was expected to take a step forward, didn't. He's actually regressed. Jeff Teague does not look like what he was last season. You have the draft picks.
Hold on, you guys have Jeff Teague? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow,
You wouldn't.
I did not know that.
You really wouldn't, because he hasn't really played.
Yeah. Wow.
He hasn't really played. People really wouldn't, because he hasn't really played. Man. He had a lot of DMPs, and there's also he just hasn't really been playing well outside the first game. And there's a whole conspiracy that I jinxed him, because after the first game he did well. I said he's going to be 6th man of the year, and then after that it's downhill.
Ooh.
So it could be all on me. But
yeah, it could be.
but with and they got young guys. They call him PP or 8 Mile over there. He looks pretty good. Neesmith is starting to come along, but he doesn't get enough minutes. So I think it's the role players outside of JB and Jason Tatum stepping up. That's a problem. Also, lineups. Guys don't have continuity because Brad Stevens doesn't know how to do lineups. He never sticks with the same lineups. He doesn't always have to put the best lineups in. So they don't really have no identity. They don't really know how to play off each other, play together. It's a lot of iso ball. And I think also a big difference now from last year's team to this year's team is Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown clearly have the keys now. 2 young players.
Yeah, they do.
I don't think Brad Stevens is the right coach for young players.
No.
Meaning he doesn't really know. Yes, he helped develop them this far, but he doesn't really get on players. He doesn't really get on players if they start doing bad, or if they lack consistency, or they take their foot off the gas. He's not that type of coach. I'm not sure this Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, they will go off, they will start doing good, but then Jaylen Brown will have this thing where he sits in the corner or he won't be as aggressive throughout the whole game. Jason Tatum will, go off on offensively, but defensively sometimes then he will not go after, he won't box out for a rebound, he won't do little things. It could be because they're using him too much, obviously, given that all the pressure's on his shoulders and they don't have that much support. But also, I feel like they don't have that vet to get on them or the coach to get on them to call them out when they are slacking. So it's really a impactful of things. I think everyone shares the blame.
When they had Hayward last year, they could switch out, put Tatum on the bench and Jaylen Brown on the bench, have Hayward sit in there, or have Hayward on the bench, put Tatum in. Now they really have less people to kind of do that. They have to kind of give these younger players more bigger roles while letting Tatum rest or Brown rest when really they need them in the game the whole time right now.
So really what I take from it, it's just a lack of player development as far as from role players in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
yes.
I know, and I know for a fact teams in the East, as far as Toronto and Miami, they do that. They do that really, really well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would love to get Miami's coach. If we could just trade, we could trade coaches. That'd be great.
Everyone would love Eric Spoelstra.
But now, Mr. Butler, I want to get into. We talked about NBA, but I want to get into NFL with you as a former offensive tackle. Right now. First off, do you think QBs get too much love? I want to give some wide receivers some love, but I want to know, do you think QBs get too much love or are they really that is it fair?
I think it's fair, man, because I've been on record and I've said this a number of times. To me, the two hardest positions in football, number one is the quarterback position, and number two is the defensive back position. Those are the two hardest positions in football. So quarterbacks, they deserve all the love because it's a hard position, and when you excel at that position, again, I tip my cap because I've been in meetings with quarterbacks, and the amount of information that is on their plate from not only week to week but from day to day as far as what they have to take in and retain, it's a very tough position. So like I said, anytime you're able to excel at that position at a consistent level, then hats off to you.
That's fair. That's true. That's very true. But right now, I want to give the wide receivers some love.
Okay. Fair.
So who do you think are the top 5 wide receivers heading to free agency? And where do you think their destinations will be?
Okay. I'll start with Chris Godwin. I think Tampa would be foolish if they even let Chris Godwin leave. So I think he's going to be tagged. Okay. Allan Robinson is number 2. He's interesting because I think the Bears will tag him, but I don't know if he wants to be tagged by the Bears because the Bears have a very, I guess you could say, inconsistent quarterback room or quarterback position right now. So I think
that's a nice way to put it.
Yeah. I think he wants to be able to have the freedom to go somewhere else where there's more consistent quarterback play, but I don't think the Bears will let him go. Number 3 for me would have to be, I would probably say Marvin Jones from Detroit. See, Detroit's interesting because I think Detroit has a decision between both him and Kenny Gallaudet. I think Detroit's going to tag one. If I'm Detroit, I would tag the younger, which is Kenny Gallaudet, and I would let Marvin Jones walk because I do think Detroit's probably going to draft a wide receiver with their 7th overall pick. I mean, again, you bring in Jared Goff, you have to surround him with weapons, and especially if you're letting one of those 2 wide receivers walk, I just mentioned, then you have to replace him with the next best possible option in the NFL draft. Then I would probably say after that, man, there's quite a few. I know you have Juju. See, the thing about Juju to me is I don't think Juju is a pure number 1. I think Juju does best as a pure number 2. He has to be like the second option because we've seen when the Steelers had Antonio Brown, Juju Smith was unbelievable. And then when Antonio Brown left, Juju had to become number 1. He just didn't really have that same production. Now, again, I'm not trying to take anything away from him. I still think he's a really good wide receiver, but I just think he's better in a Robin role than he is a Batman role. I don't think Pittsburgh retains them just because I think Pittsburgh they have other younger options that have, proven themselves, I guess, reliable this past season. And, with the restructuring of Big Ben's contract, I just don't think for the money that Juju wants. I mean, if I'm Juju, why in the hell would I take a pay cut when I'm like, 24, 25 years old right now? I think Juju wants to go out, get his money, and I think he will. Now, as far as his destination, I'm not trying to be biased, but I think a really good destination for him, just because he has that relationship with Tua off the field, I would like Miami. I mean, I think Miami would be a good destination because I think he doesn't have to be the alpha wide receiver in Miami. I think he can be a number 2 to a guy like possibly Devontae Parker, who has risen from the ashes these past couple of years. And then I would probably say too, a lot of people sleep on Curtis Samuel, but I think what he's been able to do in Carolina, even playing with Moore, I think I think he's done really, really well for himself. But see, the thing with him, I look at him more as a gadgety type receiver, a guy that can, return punts, return kicks, a guy that, you're going to have doing trick plays and reverses and things of that nature. So I don't think his market is going to be as high as those top level guys, but I think he can definitely help out the team. And I think, again, Miami will be a good destination for him too, because I think Miami is a destination where, coming from the Patriot way, Brian Flores, they don't really look at receivers as being like, okay, this is our number 1, our number 2. We're going to have a number of guys that can do a number of things. And lastly, I'll probably say Corey Davis from, Tennessee. I know Corey Davis has been kind of up and down, since he's entered the NFL. But again, I mean, he was once a first-round draft pick. And anytime, you have a chance to, grab a future first-round draft pick that really hasn't bombed out of the NFL, but, has been inconsistent. I mean, maybe a change of scenery may be exactly what is the best, I guess, recipe or formula for success for him.
So you bring up a great list and great points. And I like Miami. I like Miami because Miami, I feel like they do need a third wideout, especially with Williams coming in and out with injury. But interesting, though, you didn't mention Fuller or you didn't mention
I forgot about him.
Yeah.
I forgot about Fuller. You're right, man. Listen.
This is a great wide receiver class.
Yeah, listen, the Texas situation is in a murky waters. And I say that because with Fuller, I think you want to tag him and you want to bring him back. But at the same time, right now, it just seems like the Deshaun Watson situation is going to carry out all the way until training camp and maybe until the first game of the season, because I think Deshaun Watson is adamant. Like, listen, I'm not reporting. I'm not going to be a Houston Texan. I think, Nick Caserio, the new GM, he's like, listen, we want you and you're on this team right now and you're going to have to report. And I just think those two sides just kind of headbutting right now. So if I'm the Texans, I mean, I don't know if I take that risk in tag Fuller, because what if Deshaun Watson does want to say, you know what, I'm not playing. I'm willing to hold out and possibly miss the entire season if you don't trade me. So I think the Texans, I mean, it's, again, like I said, it's murky waters that they're in right now with Will Fuller, because I think, again, if you know Deshaun Watson's coming back, again, you tag him. But if you don't know, it doesn't make any sense to tag him at all.
No.
Well, yeah, they said they actually said they wouldn't tag him. They let him go on free agency. But if you want to keep Watson happy, you try to keep Fuller. But I want to say that because I want to get into the whole Watson stuff later about who has leverage and what we think is gonna happen. But I'm gonna get into my top 5 real quick. Number 1, I do have Allan Robertson. I think Allan Robinson is so underrated. I think he's a top 10 wide receiver. I have him actually in 5-6 spot. Great hands, reliable. No matter who his QB is. I mean, this guy has some horrible QBs thrown into him. Great hands, great route runner. He's getting up there in age. He's 28, 102 receptions on 151 targets, over 1,000 yards, 1,250 yards to be exact, and 6 touchdowns. That's not to his fault. They would not throw him the ball in the red zone. I don't know why. He could have got more touchdowns if he had a better QB. But he wants to play. He said he likes Chicago. He wants to play in Chicago, but he wants the money he deserves. He does not want to play on a franchise tag. As he was in a Clubhouse app, he was kind of talking more about like the franchise tag and like how teams have control of the player and how the player should have more control on contracts and stuff. But I do think he will welcome a long-term deal with them. The only thing with that is I don't think Chicago's GM is willing to give him the money he deserves because he has it so far. And I think Robinson wants to get paid. I don't think he will play under the franchise tag either. So I'm looking actually at places that are contending. I'm looking at places, the QBs. So his market, I thought it was going to be around 16 to 17 million because of cap situation. I thought it was going to be tighter. But now there's actually some teams are cleaning up cap space. They did get a couple more million than expected. I think Robinson's going to get something around a Keenan Allen deal, that four-year,
Mm-hmm.
80 million deal. So some places that are contending that have the cap space. Two teams I have is Washington football team and Indianapolis. I actually lean in towards Indianapolis because I think Frank Reich, they're going to be aggressive. They will pay guys no matter what it takes, especially after getting Wentz, after spending what they did.
Mm-hmm.
I think they
have
will
the money
try.
too.
Yeah, they have the money too. I think they'll be aggressive. I think they'll give him that contract, especially I think Allan Robertson is a great wide receiver for what Carson Wentz needs. Carson Wentz needs a reliable receiver, guy with hands. I think Robinson's perfect for Wentz. And I think they're a contending team, and they need a wide receiver, especially with Hilton. I think Hilton's a free agent too.
Yeah,
and he's not the same as what he used to be.
Not.
Obviously, the injuries took an impact, so I don't see him as bringing him back as number one option. I think they'll go another route. Next, I have Chris Goodwin. 24 years old, 65 receptions, over 800 yards, 7 touchdowns. Now it's a big year, 2019, when he got over 1,000 yards. But obviously, given the more targets, they spaced the ball out more that was given. He would actually say he'd love to stay with Buccaneers, but he wants a long-term secure deal, and he's not going to budge for it. He's not going to budge. He wants security. The only thing with that is obviously you have the franchise tag, and it's going to be between Shaq Barrett and it's going to be between Chris Goodwin. And what it's going to be between is who actually will play under that tag. Chris Goodwin said he would. I don't think Shaq Barrett does it again.
No.
Shaq Barrett was not even. Yeah, I don't think he was even really open to do it the first time. It was probably like those questions: will he come? Will he play under it? I don't think he would do it again. I think he's looking for a long-term deal. So I think they give it to Chris Goodwin, especially that I think the wide receiver market is so great, he could be expendable if they don't bring him back. But because you have Brady, he for only probably a year or two more, you want to maximize whatever you can get.
Yeah.
And if
it
you
makes more
franchise
sense
tag him,
because it makes more sense because if you tag Shaquille Barrett for a second year, then that tag number goes up for him because he was tagged the previous year. So it makes more sense to let him walk and test the market and go his separate ways. And now you tag Chris Godwin for the first time. And
I know they're like people are worried because that's gonna be 18% of the cap space blocking for wide receivers. But Mike Evans has said that he's open to restructure his deal. And obviously, like I said, you have Tom Brady. You want to maximize that window. My third on my list, I had Kenny Gallaudet, underrated wide receiver, and I'm not mad. I should be mad at him because I picked him number 1 for my wide receiver fantasy last season. Oh my gosh, he didn't play no games. And I don't hold vendettas. I don't hold vendettas for some people. But Kenny Gallaudet, he's a big wide receiver. He's more a 50-50 guy. He's not really a speed guy. He has struggles with separation, but he's a great big target. Reliable hands. Really come past couple years. Given last year was injury, he's going to be coming out on his own. Had over 1,000 yards. I think he said he likes Detroit. I'm not sure if that was his PR. Like he likes playing with Detroit Lions. He's open to coming back. But with the situation they are in, I feel like, and given he's 27, I think he might look for other ways. He wants what he wants. He wants to get paid for what he deserves. I'm looking also look at the Lions. What makes sense for them? Does it make sense to pay a top 1 wide receiver that's 27 for 1 year that you probably not going to get a long-term deal with to keep him on your roster, hold him off for 1 year? We are not contending. You're not going to contend. I think there is talks. The CBS reporter said they will franchise tag him, but they also might be looking to franchise tag and trade. Yeah. So I think that's what probably is going to happen, so they can at least get something back because they are a rebuilding team. I look at places that need a wide receiver. I'm looking at the Ravens. The Ravens, they have a speedster, Hollywood Brown, but they need a guy with reliable hands. I think Kenny Gallaudet would be a great fit there. They have cap space, and they are winning. They are a contending team. Yeah. So I think it's a win-win situation all around. Then I have Juju.
But the thing that I know that's coming out of Baltimore, as far as I think that's going to make it a very tough destination for receivers to really get on board to go to. I mean, even though they have Lamar Jackson, who is electrifying, is that I think Lamar Jackson has shown that he's going to run more than he's going to throw. So if you're a top of the market wide receiver, I mean, would you really consider the Ravens? I mean, again, even though that organization is known to be an organization that's going to always be in the tournament and they're going to always be contending, for, the AFC Championship and possibly the Super Bowl. But I mean, if you're a top of the market wide receiver, would you really consider going to Baltimore where you know that you're probably going to take a hit when it comes to targets and yardage? Because Lamar Jackson has shown us that, he relies a little bit more on his legs than he does his arm, because, we even heard, Hollywood, or I wouldn't say her. I mean, like we're hearing rumors of Hollywood Brown isn't really happy, with, the amount of targets he's getting and so forth.
So here's the thing I would say on that. One, it would be a trade. And they have a compensation extra third round pick, so they can make that down. But with that whole value thing of like maybe free agents are scared to go there, I do think part of the reason why Lamar runs more or is least running because he don't have the reliable targets. Hollywood Brown, yes, you could say he wants more targets, but he doesn't have the most reliable hands. He kind of reminds me of poor man Deshaun Jackson, when he has some great games and then he's very streaky. He's very streaky.
Yeah.
So I think if he has a reliable guy, I think he will pass it more. And honestly, I think it's also on offensive coordinator, because they were running the same packages for the longest time, and defenses started knowing what it was. They didn't change it up. So I think that if he has a top target there, I think he will share the love. I don't think it's going to be that much of a problem. Okay. Number 4, though, I do have Juju. He said he wants to play in Pittsburgh recently. He said he wants his legacy to be in Pittsburgh. I'm not sure if it's mutual, though, because Pittsburgh is in debt.
Exactly.
They're in debt, and they got to hope for this Ben contract to clear up cap space, and they might have other needs. Pittsburgh, I'm so jealous, is a wide receiver making machine. Okay, they always have next guy up. They already have Chase Claypool looking like the next wide receiver. So I think Juju's expendable here. And you mentioned a great point. Is he really a number 1 guy, or was he a second and third guy, or was he really a wide receiver was heightened by playing in that offense? So I think he will, because of his age and because of what he showed. I do think he will get a lot of money. And I think once the loyalty sees that Pittsburgh Steelers is not an option, it'll be about who offers the most money, which is why I have the Jets. Him going to the Jets. I thought Miami was a great option, but I think Jets would throw more money at him, and I think they'll probably get Zach Wilson. I think I could see him there being a number 1 option for the rookie. Then I have Will Fuller. Now it's important to note, whoever gets Will Fuller, he's gonna be spending 1 game for Pez, and then also he hasn't played a full season, so you might have a question mark, which also may drop the value. So this is actually will probably be a cheaper deal. One thing to look at, though, if Watson gets traded which is a big if, before the draft or whatever, this could like, especially if it drags out, this could affect where I think Fuller goes, because I feel like if Watson goes to another team that has cap space, Fuller might follow. But if it doesn't, there was 2 teams that have him interested. Green Bay Packers expressed interest in the trade market. The only thing is they have to do a lot of reconstruction, get a lot of guys to move out the deals to create cap space, because they're currently in a negative. And I see Fuller getting around $10 million average deal. So if he has speed. You know who needs speed? New England Patriots need speed, because they cannot get separation.
They need everything.
Okay, look, we don't have to go there. We don't have to go there.
For me, a perfect guy for them would be a guy like Curtis Samuel, because I think that fits the Julian Edelman mold, who now is, I think it's obvious that, he's not in his prime no more. And I think, his NFL career is, unfortunately coming to an end because of all the injuries. But I think if I'm the Patriots, if I want to continue that mold of, getting smaller, shifty receivers that can create space, that can do a lot of different things for me, listen, I see Curtis Samuels being a guy that, I would be highly surprised if Josh McDaniels doesn't make a run at him, because to me, he just kind of fits everything that the good wide receivers that they have had over the years does.
Yeah, and before we get to I want to touch on that. They did kind of similar wide receiver, who a guy who they could use kind of like a utility knife, Patterson a couple years ago. Now Samuel is a better wide receiver, but there's nothing saying that Patriots can't get 2. And maybe I'm being greedy here, but they have a lot of cap space. I think they do need a number 1 wide receiver, though. They need that guy they can trust. And I get that Fuller might be not the most trustworthy because of the injuries, but he has the speed. it's more of a sure thing. I think he's more for sure thing than Samuel at wide receiver position. He's shown last season with Watson. Obviously, that was with Watson versus whoever the Patriots team is going to be, that he could possibly be the number one wide receiver. It's just about staying healthy with him.
Correct.
So I think the Patriots too, given that they let go on cheap, I think they might look for a little deal, and I think Fuller might be the guy. But Sam, who is your top 5?
So basically, you guys hit it on the head. Those are the main guys. Chris Godwin, number 1, I feel personally. The Bucs do need to bring him back more than Antonio Brown and Gronk combined. I feel. Now,
do you think Godwin's over? Oh, I'm sorry. Do you think Godwin's over Robinson because of the age, or
because the age, and just because he fits that role over there?
Yeah.
They have Mike Evans. He is the big target over there. Then you got Chris Godwin, the slot receiver on that side. You need both of them. I feel like if you lose one of them, you're going down. The Super Bowl contention just breaks down maybe by 25%. Then 2, you got Allan Robinson. I still feel like he shouldn't play in Chicago anymore. He deserves a big payday somewhere else. He needs a good quarterback. I could potentially see maybe the Jags just because that Trevor Lawrence pick. They have so much cap space over there. So much cap space. And they're in Jacksonville, so it's a warm destination. And all the hype around Trevor Lawrence, I feel like you do need to surround him with some wide receivers so he doesn't come in looking like a bust.
Well, you know what? That would be funny because, that's where he started at in Jacksonville, Allan Robinson. So, I mean, that would be full circle right there.
Yes.
Him and DJ Chalk Jr. over there. I feel like that'd be a solid combination. Then 3, I feel like you do have to put Juju there. Yeah, not the number 1, but he would be a number 2. There's plenty of teams in the league that would use him. It is just he is going to want a big payday, which he kind of deserves. He's young in his prime. He deserves something big. The Steelers, I don't see that happening just because Chase Claypool, and none of them are number 1 receiver yet. Chase Claypool is still developing over there, and Juju showing he can't be that guy. So they're going to let him walk. I don't know where he goes personally. I feel like there's a lot of factors going into that. But he will go wherever he gets the biggest payday. I don't think he's going for the quarterback situation, just the payday.
Yeah.
Then 4, I was like in between Will Fuller here. I think he would be number 4 for me. He is a good wide receiver. Yes, he hasn't been healthy, but plenty of teams could use him. And if the Texans don't give him that franchise tag, he could easily fit in on any system as like a number 2, number 3 guy. But some people that I think people are sleeping on, Sammy Watkins is a free agent. While he's not a top guy, I could see, like you said, the Ravens don't want top guys. I could see him going to the Ravens because we saw the Chiefs. He doesn't really care about his targets because Chiefs, he gets some games he'll get like 4, other games he'll go 3 games without any. I could see the Ravens picking him up over there. He'd be a solid wide receiver. Pair him with Hollywood Brown over there because he's not a big target guy. He's just, I'm going to do whatever it takes. He can run back the ball. I think that'd be a great fit.
And I hate to cut you off. The good thing about signing a guy like him is you don't have to pay the amount of money you're going to have to pay the other guys, that are at the top of the market, because I think Sammy Watkins is, if I'm not mistaken, he should be nearing 30 or maybe right at 30. So I mean, that's a guy that you can kind of get. I don't want to say at a discount, but you can get him at a really good price. And if he's able to stay healthy, you can get really good production out of him for that price. Yeah.
So before we get to our interview, I got to address this because there's 2 problems I have with this. I think one is, I know you're not the biggest fan of the Ravens, but they need a true number 1 wide receiver. You're giving them Watkins.
Watkins plays for 1 game. Just because that target situation, they're complaining about targets over there, he's not going to complain because for the Chiefs, he really doesn't get many targets with Travis Kelce there and Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, but I'm not sure. But besides 1 game, he's shown he can't be a number 1 guy. But who was your top? So I want to get this firm. Who did you put over him? So you have top 5. You have Chris Goodwin, Allan Robinson.
Yeah.
Juju, Will Fuller. You have him over Kenny Gallaudet, Sammy Watkins?
No, I'm just saying that's my kind of like sleeper pick in this free agency. I feel like top 5, you would have Kenny Gallaudet in that. But that's my sleeper pick. No one's really talking about him.
Okay, the only excuse I can see that is that Kenny Galladay's going to get franchise tag, and there's no way he'll be a free agent. But there's no way, if I am a team, I'm picking Kenny Gallaudet all day over Sammy Watkins.
I would too. I'm just saying he did for the Ravens system.
Now, you know what? Listen, I agree with both, but I agree with Sam more. I just think that he fits the Ravens a little bit better because I think the Ravens are a run first, more gadgety type of offense to where, yes, if you are a big time wide receiver, like I said, you're not going to get the targets you want to get. So I think, he hit it right on the head. I mean, Sammy Watkins is, I think, now creeping up on what year 9 or so in the NFL, to where he's a lot older. He knows he's not going to get a lot of targets, and he's coming from a place, if he decides to leave, where he didn't get a lot of targets. So I think that would be a perfect marriage, because again, if he can stay healthy, you're going to get good production out of him, and not having to pay top of the market wide receiver money, and still have Hollywood Brown on the other side.
Yeah, that's the fair point. But the thing is that what's kind of got Ravens in trouble, is that they're too run heavy, right? And they don't have too much of a passing attack, which is why I think they look for the wide receiver. Now, I even think there's actually guys who won't complain about targets that are better than Sammy Watkins. I think guy you mentioned, Curtis Samuel or Corey Davis, would be better.
Yeah, I can see Corey Davis too.
Yeah, they're not really they're guys who still have a lot of potential, are younger. I think even though Corey Davis has up and downs, he's a lot more productive than Sammy Watkins.
Yeah, where he's at right now in his career.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, so I think that would be a better fit or better impact for the Ravens than Sammy Watkins. I just don't trust Sammy Watkins outside of first couple games. But more importantly, I want to get into an interview with our special guest, former NFL tackle for the Panthers and Texans, Rashad Butler. Thank you for coming on our show again.
Thank you.
I want first. It's been a joy, really, and you have a lot. Not just NFL. You know your game about NBA too.
Yeah, I do. Well, listen, man. Like I said, I've been working in sports radio for like 3 years, like 3.5 years, man. So being in the local South Florida market, we cover everything from Dolphins, Hurricanes, Heat, even Marlins. So I know a little baseball as well too.
So I have some Florida. I actually lived in Florida for some time. I have some Florida. Where can I hear you? Like on is it on the radio? Is it Spotify?
So during the season, football season, you can hear me. Usually I do post game for the Miami Hurricanes on Saturdays, or really whenever they play. And then usually I do post game as well. Actually, this past year I did pregame for the Miami Hurricanes. The year before last, in 2019, I did post game, but this year I got moved to pregame for the University of Miami football season. And then for the Miami Dolphins, I was doing pregame, but I got moved to post game, so I kind of switched their role. So this season, I don't know if it's going to be post game or pregame, but fans, if you enjoy me today, you can look out for me, whether it's on pregame or post game this upcoming season.
Yeah, I'm at the fly down there and stay with Jenny to come listen to a couple games.
Yeah,
definitely keep an ear out. Now I want to know, how did you first get into football?
Oh man, so it's funny. So growing up, I played a number of sports, man. I think my dad did a really good job of getting me acquainted with every sport. I think the first sport I played was t-ball, and then from t-ball I went to baseball. See, the thing about baseball, I played catcher, and I played I think it was either right or left field. I can't remember. I was better at catcher, but see, my thing with baseball is I couldn't hit. I did not have any hand-eye coordination to save my life. But I wish my dad would have, told me the amount of money that baseball players were making at that time. I mean, I probably would have applied myself, a lot better.
Right?
So then from baseball, I went to basketball. And with basketball, I was decent, but see, with basketball, I didn't really understand that, playing the 4 or the 5, you really can't, test everything. I mean, so every time someone went to the rim, I was challenging them left and right, and I would get fouled out. But it's funny because the whole entire time through playing t-ball, baseball, and basketball, I was playing football in between in the neighborhood, as far as like, two-hand touch in the street and tackle in the grass. And I was bigger than a lot of the kids, so I always ran in the grass. Like every time I got the ball, I was running in the grass. But my mom was adamant about not having me play organized football until the equipment could fit on me, the right way and so forth. So I remember when I turned, I think it was 11 to 12 years old, that's when I played football for the first time, organized football. And from there, I just felt at home. I mean, I was like a little kid in the candy shop, running around, tackling, getting dirty. And that's pretty much was a wrap for me, as far as like, listen, this is my sport, and I think I'm going to actually put everything into it, because again, it just felt more natural than both baseball and basketball at the time.
Absolutely.
All right. So I want to go like kind of like the college career. When you were in high school, what year did you start getting recruited, and what made you choose University of Miami, one of like the best football schools they have?
So, I first started receiving letters, I think was around the end of my sophomore year, because my sophomore year was when I played varsity and I started all the 10 games my sophomore year. So I think that summer I started receiving letters, and I started receiving letters from smaller schools. And then I want to say maybe like midway through my junior year, I started receiving letters from big schools. It was funny because at the time, I wasn't a huge Miami Hurricanes fan. I wasn't a huge Florida Gators fan or a huge FSU fan either. I think at that time, I was a bigger fan of the University of Michigan, because at that time, they were like really the only team that was playing like on primetime television at 12 noon. Because during that time, back I want to say maybe like in the late 90s, the primetime games came on like at 12 noon. Like now, like a lot of primetime games come on like at night. But back then, like in the late 90s, if you played on primetime college football, you were like 12 noon ABC. And Michigan was always playing like on noon on ABC. And I just, something about the colors and just the tradition they had and so forth, I was just stuck on Michigan. Then I want to say maybe like a year later, I started seeing more Alabama. And this was when Alabama had like Sean Alexander, Chris Samuels. Like they had a really good team. I mean, again, they weren't the Alabama they are now, but they had a really good team at the time. And they started recruiting me heavy. Then I went to a camp called Down and Dirty. It was strictly for offensive linemen and defensive linemen. The summer going into my senior year, it was like I want to say a 3 or 4 day camp, and it was like pads and everything, helmet, like we were hitting. It was like up in, I want to say, Winter Park, like the Orlando area of Florida. Yeah. And there were 2 coaches from Miami, the offensive line coach and the defensive line coach. They were there. And I did so well at that camp to where that's when not only did they start recruiting me, but they offered me. And once they offered me, it took me some time because, again, it was out of Michigan, Alabama, and Miami. But I started to follow Miami more closely my senior year. And, that was the year when they got snubbed from going to the national championship, and they beat the brakes off Florida. But I remember my dad said something to me. He was like, listen, iron sharpens iron. And I just knew the type of players that they had at the University of Miami. And I just knew that if I wanted to play at the next level, it may have been best for me to go somewhere where I really had to earn, my play time. Because I think now, like a lot of kids go places where they can play right away because, back then we didn't really have social media. You know what I mean? Everything we read or we heard was in either on TV or the newspaper. So for me, I didn't really care about, sitting down and redshirting for a year and not getting my first start. Like I didn't get my first start at Miami until I want to say my redshirt sophomore year. So my first 2 years, my first year I was redshirted, so I didn't play at all. In my second year, I played mostly like special teams and so forth. And then my first start didn't come to my third year because I stayed all 5 years. I redshirted at University of Miami. So, we had a lot of guys that didn't mind doing that. So I just wanted to go somewhere where I knew that the competition was going to be high, and I knew that there were going to be players that were going to play at the next level. So that was University of Miami, and it wasn't hard to make the decision. And I went there during the golden era, because my freshman year, we won the national championship Rose Bowl. I mean, people may say arguably the best college team ever. Listen, I used to get in arguments all the time with Matt Leinart. I played in Houston with Matt Leinart for a year, and him and our lockers were right next to each other. And, he would always say 2004, 2005 USC team was better than the 2001, 2002 Miami Hurricanes team. I'm like, no way, dude. Like this, we would have destroyed you guys. And then, we went back and we got cheated, out of a national championship to Ohio State my sophomore year in the 2003 Fiesta Bowl. So my first 2 years, you're talking about primetime television all the time. I mean, we had a lot of media coverage. I mean, I played with guys like Ken Dorsey, Andre Johnson, Ed Reed, Clinton Portis, you name it, man. DJ Williams, Jonathan Vilma, Kellen Winslow Jr., Sean Taylor. You know what I mean? It's funny because, I came in with, my recruiting class, just to name a few, was Sean Taylor, Frank Gore, Antro Rowe, Kellen Winslow Jr. Like all 4 of those guys was in my recruiting class in 2000. So that's why I chose University of Miami, man, because I just knew how high the competition was. And, to be great at something, you have to surround yourself with, other people that are great at what they do as well.
Timing is huge too. You want to make sure you're ready for it. You want to make sure you're ready for it. Absolutely.
Right.
So given that, when did you know, like playing in college, when did you know, oh, I can do this professionally. I can take this to the next level in NFL. And following that, you also drafted in the third round by the Panthers. Can you take me through that night and what was that like?
Okay, so to answer your first question, I would say probably my junior year I would say my sophomore year, because we had a lot of highly, I guess, touted prospects and so forth. And, in spring is all about competition. You know what I mean? Like, you go against, your teammates, and I was holding my own against guys that I knew were being talked about, potentially being drafted first round or second round. So when I was doing my thing against those type of players, and I knew that, okay, if I keep it up and I continue to work hard and grind, then there's a possibility I can get drafted. Not only get drafted, but get drafted. Well, I think back then it was only 2 days. It was like the first day, Saturday was rounds 1 through 3, and then Sunday was rounds 4 through 7. So for me, the goal was never to get drafted, the first round or second round. Like, to me, it was just getting drafted in the first day, like the top 100. Like I said, listen, if I can get drafted in the top 100, which I did, but I didn't expect, I'm like, listen, I'll be good with that. So leading up into the draft, the agents I chose at the time, they're actually with like Young Money Agency right now, but Ken Sornoff, he was with Star Sports back at the time. Like, the biggest guys he had was Chester Taylor, who played running back on the NFL, and Nate Burleson, who's on, those were his biggest clients at the time. We're talking about back in 2006 and so forth. But I chose him because, him and his brother, they didn't shy away from the truth. They said, look, they're like, look here, Rashad, you're a guy, you could be a potential day one draft pick as far as like late third round. But they say, we think your sweet spot is probably going to be, somewhere around 4. So you're looking at an early day 2 guy. They said, worst come to worst, maybe a 5th round guy, but, we don't see you going past the 5th. And mind you, I had a lot of other agents I sat down to talk with that was telling me, oh, listen, you're going to be like 2nd round pick for sure. If anything, you're going to be an early 3rd round pick. And again, players, reread what, scouts and what, talking media heads say. So, I knew that, I was going to be possibly late 3rd round. I would say between late 3rd round and early 5th. Like, I knew that was my sweet spot. So like when I heard Ken and his brother kind of, hit down the head, I said, listen, these are the guys, because, they don't know me from a can of paint, and they're willing to, give it to me truthful. So that's why I chose them. And I remember draft night like it was yesterday. That was the draft where, of course, you had Reggie Bush, Mario Williams, Matt Leinart, Vince Young. Like, that was my draft class. And I knew that for me, it was probably going to be at night if I was to get drafted, meaning like late 3rd round. But I think I was gearing myself up for probably early Sunday morning, the 4th round. Mm-hmm. I remember like just kind of watching the draft casually and so forth. And night rolls around, and my dad and I, we go to Wendy's. And I remember being in the car, and I get a call from a 704 number. And mind you, I didn't know anything about, Carolina at all. I'm like, 704? What is 704? And, the guy who was on the other line was like, this is so-and-so from the Carolina Panthers. We were about to take you at the number 89th pick. How do you feel about being a Carolina Panther? And it's funny, like when they ask every draft pick that question, it's like, listen, like no draft pick sit there and say like, yo, I don't, know what I mean? Like, but it's like,
like, I don't know about it. I don't know. I don't know if I want to do this.
I hear that every year. I'm saying to myself, why do these guys always ask these draft picks, how do you feel about being, so I'm like, listen, of course he's going to, like, he should say yes. You know what I mean?
No one's going to say no.
Yeah, exactly. So I was ecstatic. And that was my first time going up to the Carolina area. I remember that year, our first round draft pick was D'Angelo Williams. That was our first round draft pick from Memphis and so forth. And that was a really good experience, a short experience, but it worked out the best for me because I just really didn't. I felt early on I really didn't fit into Carolina's offensive scheme for me. And when they waived me after, well, I would say it actually was after my second training camp, so it was actually going into my second season. Houston claimed me off waivers right away, and I went and played for Rick Smith, who was the GM at the time, who did a really good job of constructing those Houston teams during the time I was there, from going from an average organization to a playoff organization.
Houston's so promised when Houston's
and Gary Kubiak. I mean, I just love the the Shanahan and Kubiak scheme. I mean, like that zone running scheme and that West Coast type offense. It kind of fit exactly into my skill set. So, being in Houston was pretty much the best years, not only of my life but just my NFL career, because I just feel like when I went there, we were an average team, a very, very young team. But by the time I left there, my contract was up after being extended one time. I just felt that we grew as a team, and I mean, so many great players came through there. I mean, I remember guys like Mario Williams, Connor Barwin, young JJ Watt, Brian Cushing, D'Amico Ryan, Aaron Foster. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, again, we had some players, man. So Rick Smith and Gary Kubiak, they did a really good job. It's just unfortunate that due to the economics of football and so forth, they weren't able to retain some of the talent that we had. But for the time being, I mean, again, like I said, when I came to Houston, we were 8-8, average at best, and then by the time I left, we were a team that was 12-4 and in the playoffs. So yeah,
and they weren't an old franchise either. They was actually just got started in the late early 2000s. They just got started and they kind of picked it up quick. So it'd be interesting to see where they go from now. But I don't want to hog the questions. I do got some more I want to ask you. But Sam, what do you have?
No, all right. So speaking on the Texans, you played with Arian Foster. How was it blocking for someone like that? Did it make it easier because he was so good, or like how was that?
Also, I want to know, wait, real quick, do you prefer running or blocking? Because I know this is a real thing with linemen. You prefer pass blocking or run blocking?
Okay, so I'll answer your question first. I prefer run blocking. I think a lot of offensive linemen would say they prefer run blocking. I mean, listen, pass blocking is good when it caught. Like I say this, play action pass. I love play action pass blocking. But as far as like 2 minute, when the defense knows, you know what I mean, you have to pass. Now that gets a little dicey, you know what I mean? Because, as offensive linemen, we don't get rotated in or out. Defensive linemen, they're always coming in fresh, you know what I mean? So we have to, play that entire series, going up and down the field for a 2-minute drill. But to speak about Arian Foster, I mean, I think he said it best. It's poetry in motion, man. I mean, I've never played with a running back that makes running look effortlessly. I remember his rookie season, he used to get yelled at by Kubiak all the time because it looked as if he wasn't running hard, but he was. But it took everybody in the building getting used to that, because again, he just ran so effortlessly. And when you first watched it, you're thinking to myself, like, why is this guy like, I wouldn't say jogging, but like, why isn't he running full speed? Because again, one back that runs so hard and runs so fast in his prime was Adrian Peterson. I mean, you could tell that guy is running 100 miles per hour. But with Arian Foster, it didn't look that way. But the funny part about it, he was moving. But yeah, I mean, he just he was a back that understood that system, that scheme down to a science. And, he was just very shifty. And like I said, everything he did was effortless. I guess the only past running back I can compare him to as far as being smooth like that. Now, again, I hold this guy I'm about to name to a high regard, but he reminded me of Marshall Faulk a little bit. Just so smooth, smooth. And it's funny because, I don't want to do Arian a disservice as far as, how he took care of his body. But if you looked at Arian, he really wasn't a very defined or cut up type of running back.
Yeah.
If you ever met Marshall Faulk, I mean, I had the pleasure of meeting him before. Marshall Faulk doesn't look like if you saw Marshall Faulk, you'd be like, this guy never played football.
Big. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And again, I'm not trying to say Arian had a body like that, but Arian just he wasn't if you took off his shirt, you weren't going to be intimidated by him. But at the same time, I mean, again, when he got on that field, you were intimidated because he can make you miss in a phone
Yeah.
booth. He was just so smooth and just so elusive.
And that's why I think also people say, he doesn't like he's walking full speed. It looks like he's kind of like determining, like when he was running, like, okay, what am I going to do? What are they going to do? Like he was like literally, he was playing out everything was like slow motion.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely one of the better backs. You also face a guy that's pretty popular right now, talking about in the news, J.J. Watt in the beginning of his career, came in. What was it like going against him in practice? And did you see like kind of where he was becoming? Where do you think he should end up? Where were you looking for him to end up?
So with JJ came in 2011, and JJ showed flashes, but I don't think any one of us at the time thought JJ would turn into the JJ that he has now turned into. Like I said, he showed a lot of flashes, and we knew he was strong, had long arms just like me. High effort guy, but at the same time, he was a high effort guy that had a lot of skill. So we knew that, hey, he was going to be a good player. But I don't think anybody at the time in 2011 or even 2012 would have thought that he would have turned into the player that he is now. And again, that's not a disservice to JJ. It's just being honest. I mean, again, we knew he was going to be good, but I don't think we saw this type of greatness or level of greatness in JJ. But as far as the person, I mean, JJ was always a great person, man. We used to always tease JJ and call JJ an All-American boy because he always said the right things. I mean, listen, I love JJ now because I think JJ now is to the point where, he has enough money to where he's not really fearful of, any of his endorsements being hurt. So I think now we get the more candid, true JJ. But back then, JJ, we could lose a very tough game, and JJ can, have a bad play that, he won it back, but he's always, or I say this, he will always say the right thing. You're saying to myself, like, JJ, we know you're not thinking of that, man. Like, listen, just go ahead and say what you want. But that just wasn't him. So again, I like the JJ Watt that we see now because he's more candid, he's more open, he's more honest than he was back then. But I get it. I get it.
Yeah. Now, where do you root for him to end up? Like, if you had where are you Packers? There's Packers. There's Cleveland.
Yeah. Go back home, man. Listen. JJ is a true Wisconsin boy, man. I think JJ. I think in his offseason, I think he lives near that area, like in a nice cabin. So listen, man. Go back home, play for your home team, because I don't think a lot of people understand how fun that is. When I was in college, just being close to home, that was really fun. I couldn't have imagined going somewhere like, I know USC recruited me when they had Pete Carroll, and that wasn't an option just because I didn't want to go that far away from home. So if I'm JJ, man, find a way to go back to Green Bay, play with arguably the best quarterback, in our modern generation, in Aaron Rodgers. And again, play for your hometown, man. Allow your parents, to come to, every game. And again, I'm sure his parents may have been doing that already in Houston, man. But there's nothing like playing for like your hometown, like city, man. It's nothing like.
We have a cheesehead too that watches this show, Brett W. Would love to hear that. He would love to hear that. He would have to take a discount though, given the cap space. But sure. He has the money, like you say, so it might not be a big problem.
Especially for the ring, I think he'd do it.
Exactly. Listen. There's not many players in this league that get a chance to play with one of the all-the-time greats at quarterback that hey, if I go to this team, we're not only going to be in the playoffs, but we're going to be knocking on the door of potentially appearing in the Super Bowl. So why not, man? Listen, JJ's made enough money to where I think he's at the stage of his career where, he's definitely vying for that ring, and he should be.
Yeah, for sure. I still got more questions.
Go ahead, man. Go ahead.
So we talked about tough positions to play on offense. How tough is it to play tackle on offense, and where would you rank it in terms of the offense?
The importance of it, because they said tackle is the second most important.
Yeah, I would put it right behind the quarterback position, because if you just think about the physics of the position, you're moving backwards when it comes to pass blocking, and you have a defender that's moving forward. And these edge rushers, again, I don't like saying defensive end because I think I think football is starting to become positionless. So I think you have these edge rusher nowadays, whether it's a outside linebacker or a classic or true defensive end, doing air quotes here. Those guys are, a lot more athletic and faster than us. So I just think when you think about the physics of the position as far as when it comes to pass blocking, we're backpedaling or moving backwards and they're moving, full speed forward. It just puts us at a disadvantage. So it's a very hard position to play and not easy to play when it comes to pass blocking. So I would put it right behind the quarterback position by far.
Yeah, especially, talk about difficulty. You got to control a 200, 300-pound guy, coming at you full speed.
And
it's much harder than that.
One thing that sucks about it, too, is, you can play a great game, and the minute you have a sack or you give up a sack, it just negates that good game. Listen, I used to always tease, our edge rushers or our guys that play defensive line. Listen, you can have a crappy game, you can get pancaked here and there, but you make one sack fumble. Everybody's patting you on the back. No one even saw that play. You got ran over by the running back or ran over by the. It's just, it's
the truth.
Yeah,
it's the truth.
No,
it's messed up.
It is.
It's the messed up. But what I want to get into is, also you played for Houston. You played swing tackle, right? You played left and right. So is there really much of a difference? And which one did you prefer?
There is a difference if you have to learn later in your career. So in college, I started off learning both. And if you start off learning both, the best way I could describe it, and this may make a lot of people laugh for the show purposes, it's like trying to wipe your butt with the opposite hand that you normally don't wipe your butt.
Okay.
It's very awkward at first. You have to really rep it over and over and over again. You kind of have to rep both sides equally, kind of once you get the hang of the side you're not really used to playing. So when I got to the NFL, I wouldn't say I was a pro at it, but I felt a lot more at home than a lot of other guys that were trying to, I guess, train on both sides of the line. But it's not easy at first. And I think it's harder if you're trying to learn. I think it's harder if you're forced to learn in the NFL. I think if you're forced to learn in college, it's a lot easier because the level of competition isn't as high as far as the demand to perform at a high level.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Nice analogy. I like the analogy too.
Show purposes.
Yeah. So blocking. You went against some tough guys.
Yeah.
Who, in your opinion, was the toughest guy to block throughout college and NFL career?
Oh, man. Throughout college, we played. So for us in college, our huge games were Florida State. So Florida State had Wembley, Kamarion Wembley, who was drafted by the Browns. I want to say the same year I was drafted in the first round. He was tough. I played him against Elvis Dummerville, when he was at Louisville. He was a tough guy, short, strong. Those were the Darryl Tapp. I can't forget about Darryl Tapp at Virginia Tech. I would probably say those three guys are probably the toughest guys that I had a lot of respect for, that really made you bring it every play, and you had to be on your game. In the NFL, of course, we were in the same division with two monsters in Robert Mathis and Dwight Freeney. Those guys were just a headache to block, man. We faced them twice a year, man. So listen, I used to always hate going up to early on in my career, it was called the RCA Dome, like the old stadium. But whether it was RCA Dome or Lucas Oil Field, I used to hate going up there and playing those two guys, man, because they were just so great at what they did. Another guy, Osi Umenyiora, man. He was a guy that had great hands, man. It's funny, Osi wasn't that big. You're talking about a guy that soaking wet, maybe 255 soaking wet, man, but just had great hands and great speed and understood the position. Tamba Ali was another guy that I think what made Tamba so good was just he had really good hands, but he just played so hard 24/7, man. He was a guy that, again, you can be winning the game, or again, you could be up by, 3 touchdowns late in the fourth quarter, or even 14 points late in the fourth quarter, where listen, the game is about a 90% chance it's over with. but he's gonna he's gonna play every down like it was the first play of the game.
Like, man, give it up, yo. It's over.
Yeah. DeMarcus Ware. It's funny. Actually, my first start came against DeMarcus Ware, man. I mean, you're talking about a guy that had the speed, the strength, and one thing I used to use to my advantage was my long arms. But he was a guy like JJ that had just as long arms as myself, man. So I'll probably say, like I said again, to recap it for the listeners or the viewers, I'll probably say Dwight Freeney, Robert Mathis in Indianapolis in their prime.
Okay.
Osi Umenyiora when he was in New York in his prime. Tamba Ali when he was with the Chiefs in his prime. And then DeMarcus Ware when he's with the Cowboys in his prime.
That's a tough lineup.
Yeah.
That's a tough lineup.
Yeah.
Now I do want to ask you, you suffered some injuries throughout your career, especially being lineman. You had some tricep injury, you had an elbow injury. Being lineman, like, tell me, how you were able to overcome that, and how did it impact your game? Also, I believe was it 2012, when you were going to be a starter, and you end up getting, I believe, those tricep injuries. How did you affect your mind state going into rehab?
Oh man, I mean, listen, I played 8 years, a good 8 years. I could have played longer, man. It was just if it wasn't for those injuries, man, I feel like I could have got at least like 4 more years at least out of the NFL. Because at that time, man, before the injuries, I was feeling good body-wise. I was in a good state mentally. I felt as if at that time I was just starting to hit my prime and kind of, like, I tell people one thing about the NFL, it's about getting into a groove as far as how you eat, how you train, whether it's in season and off season. I feel like usually that groove isn't developed or established for a lot of players until, I would say, probably like around year 4, year 5, if you're fortunate enough to make it that long, because the average career span is like right around 2.5, 3 years. So around that time, I think I was like in year 4, year 5, and I'm like, okay, now I got the swing of, my schedule in season, my schedule off season with my trainer, how I eat in season, how I eat, off season, and things of that nature. And then boom, I had, my first injury, which was my left tricep. I tore in practice in 2011. And that was an injury where at first I thought my elbow was dislocated, but it was a torn triceps. And that was a long rehab. It really was. I didn't know at the time how strong tendons are. When you tear tendons, how, they have to really, reattach it and sew it back to the insertion, and just how methodical you have to be with the rehab and even the strengthening process, range of motion, all that stuff. And then when I did the right one in the preseason, the last preseason, like, again, I was only supposed to play a series in that last preseason game. And the first series, man, I go out and I tear the right one, man. And I think that's when I knew, I'm like, man, I got to go through this entire process again. Luckily, me going through it the first time with my left arm, it made the process a lot easier, but it made the process a lot harder to cope with mentally. And then that's when I was able to move on to Cleveland, because my contract was up with Houston after that season. Because it's just crazy how, things worked out because before I tore my left tricep tendon, I signed a 2-year extension with Houston, because at the time I knew we still had Eric Winston, who was, my college teammate.
Yeah.
And I felt like that, they were only going to keep him around for 1 more year in 2011. And I felt that, okay, I felt like, what, okay, at least I can go into 2012, my contract year again. And hopefully if I start, I can go into free agency in 2013 and really, try to break the bank. But that didn't happen. And it was devastating, because a lot of people don't know. So my free agent class was the year of the lockout. And that hurt a lot of us, man, because a lot of us that were unrestricted free agents, we really didn't have a chance to, kind of shop ourselves around to various teams, because, when the lockout occurred, we were locked out for the entire offseason. So that right there before 2011, that was the reason why, I pretty much had no choice but to remain in Houston, because Houston was the only team that knew who I was and, knew my game and saw it up close and personal, to where they were really they were willing to give me
Yeah.
the money I wanted because I knew I was at that time. I knew I was going to have to come back as a backup, even though I didn't want to. But at that time, the way the lockout occurred and the way it really hurt free agency, it made it hard for me like to kind of go from team to team and kind of vouch myself as a potential starter and get the money that I wanted. So I was kind of forced to kind of go back to Houston. Again, I love Houston for at that time making me the highest paid, backup offensive lineman in the NFL. But that's why I took a 2-year deal because I said, well, you know what? If I can't take a 1 year, let me take a 2-year, and let me get back to the market as soon as possible. And then that happened. But I give Cleveland Browns a lot of credit for taking a chance on me. And I give myself, a lot of credit as well for really rehabbing, and preparing myself accordingly, because I don't think Cleveland signed me at the minimum thinking that I was going to turn into the player that I turned into early on in Cleveland, because, an offensive lineman tearing both his triceps is like, a running back or wide receiver having, tearing both ACLs. You know what I mean? It's like, you know what I mean? Like, we don't know about this guy. Plus, I was on the wrong side of 30 and so forth, man. So, those injuries, they were tough because, like I said, man, I feel like those injuries really kind of derailed, my career to where I felt like I could at least get 4 more years out of the NFL, at least 12 out of the NFL if it wasn't for those injuries.
For sure. Before we get to Sam, my next question, there is a question that I still want to ask you real quick. Your quick thoughts on Rashad and Bob Sanders as I get my charger.
Wait, excuse me?
Oh, sorry.
So you didn't have to block him on the line, but what are your thoughts on Bob Sanders?
Oh, man, listen, Bob Sanders, man, is a beast, man. It's funny you mentioned his name. I actually saw a NFL throwback, I guess you could say, highlight of Bob Sanders on IG, and one of my closest friends, he played safety for the Minnesota Vikings. Not during that time. He's like a lot younger than me. But I sent that to him. I'm like, man, if this guy, much like myself, could have remained healthy, I mean, sky was the limit, man. I mean, Bob was a beast. I mean, you're talking about a guy that was 5'8", man, like 205, like, I mean, 210 that could just run, tackle, you name it, man. But yeah, man, I mean, it's just, I hate players like that as far as makes you think like what could have been if they were able to stay healthy, because I mean, the promise was there, man. His first, 3 or 4 years in the NFL, to where, you're like, hey, man, this guy isn't big, but he plays bigger than he is, and he plays so fast, and he's so instinctual, man. So listen, I'm a huge Bob Sanders fan,
All right, and we're talking about injuries and such. We know you dealt with colitis early on in your career. How hard was it dealing with that? And then how was it when the Texans offered to take you on the team and bring you to a specialist? Like, how did that feel knowing someone had your back?
Yeah, okay, so it's crazy because for me, I didn't know what was going on. So I feel like that was the reason why Carolina waived me at the time, because when I got drafted, when you get or before you get drafted, they know everything about you as far as medicals, like everything, like
FBI type stuff.
Yeah, like teams do, like an extensive digging, of who you are. So I had no issues in college or anything like that. And the first issue I had was the off season after my rookie season. So it was the off season going into my second year. I was using the restroom a lot. I had blood in my stool. I was losing a lot of energy, losing a lot of weight. I didn't know what was going on. And Carolina didn't either, and they sent me to a lot of specialists, and no one could kind of pinpoint what it was. So mind you, I went through the entire offseason as far as minicamp, OTAs, even training camp, dealing with this. And that was actually the best training camp I had in Carolina as far as from year 1 to year 2. And I think the coaches were very, highly impressed with just, my maturation, not only as a person, because, I was a little immature my rookie year as far as like, the player, because I was trying to adjust to, being a professional, making football like your lifestyle, your career. So, when that happened, I just think that they were kind of thrown off, and I think they really didn't know what was going to be the potential future. So I just think again, I can't at the time I was upset, but I can't fault him now looking at it. You know, I mean, they had to make the best investment for their team in the future of their team, you know, at that time. And I think just not knowing like, hey, like, you know, this didn't come up, you know, when we scouted this guy, you know, all through college. And now, you know, he has an issue that he doesn't know what's going on. We can't figure out. It just may be best for us to, you know, part ways. But I give a lot of credit to Rick Smith, because I remember like when I first spoke to Rick Smith, he knew what it was, because he said he had, I think his mother, was suffering from it. So he said, listen, you know, we're going to bring you in. He's like, we're not expecting you to play right away. Because I remember, I think the first 8 or 9 weeks I did not dress, because Houston brought me in right before their first game of the 2007 season. And at that time I was slim. I think I may have lost, about 15 pounds, because I think about 15, 20, because when I was in Carolina, my rookie year in Carolina, I was about 295-ish. And at that time, when they brought me in Houston, a year later, I was like 275. I mean, I was doing bad. And I remember like they got me diagnosed right away, took me to like a gastro, got me on the medication, and just, you know, I started eating more regularly, started feeling like a lot better. And before you knew it, I was back up to 295, 300 like that. And I spent, you know, like I said, 6 wonderful seasons, man, in Houston from 2007 through 2012.
I would say, what's the, you have to hit, I gotta imagine, because the old lineman, you have to reach a certain benchmark. What's that benchmark?
Okay, so in the NFL, to become vested to where, you know, now, you know, you have like you're part of the pension plan, the 401k, like the NFL benefits. For some benefits, it's 2 years, but for the really big benefits that, you know, you're able to, you know, touch, you know, when you reach a certain age, you know, when you're done with football, those are 4 years. You know what I mean?
I didn't even know that.
Yeah. And even for the NFL, for free agency, it has to be 4 years to like. So it's funny. So in the NFL, it's like you have accredited season and you have accrued seasons. So accrued seasons only account for free agency. So you have to have 4 accrued seasons to be unrestricted free agent. And really, all you need is you need to be on the active roster for at least 6 weeks out of or 6 weeks for 4 seasons. I mean, those seasons don't have to be straight seasons, but again, I mean, you don't accrue a season until you're on the active roster for at least 6 games. And then for accredited season, and credited seasons mainly are for like NFL benefits, you know what I mean, player benefits, like later in your career. You have to be on an active NFL roster for at least 3 games to get credited for that season and so forth.
Oh wow! Wait, was there a certain weight you had to hit, or no? Per team.
Okay, so it's funny. So when I was in Houston, really my entire career, I was always undersized for my position. So for me, my weight was 310. I couldn't be below 310. If I was below 310, then I would get fined a pound. I can't remember how much it was, but it was, you know, more than a few hundred. Yeah. And then for certain players, you know, have to be under. So certain players can't be over. So usually for us in Houston, our weigh-in days were Thursday morning. So, you know, you would see like a lot of guys, you know, like on Wednesday after practice, like in the sauna, you know what I mean, trying to, you know, shed those extra pounds. Or even like even there would be a lot of guys coming in early Thursday morning before we had to weigh in, you know, kind of, you know, shed those pounds and so forth, because you know, hey, it cost. It cost like a while.
Talk about motivation, nothing that money's not, you want to play with your money. But since we talked about injuries, okay, my question is, you dealing with a lot of injuries in your career, and you kind of knew with the Steelers, like, okay, this is the time I can't do this no more. Like, you knew that's the problem. I feel like with a lot of athletes is they keep trying to play through it, and they end up, you know, you see later they have, you know, either CTE or really like they've messed up their body so much. Now we see other guys like Andrew Luck kind of knew like they stepped away. When should players know, like, okay, when to step away? And what would be your advice to them?
Ooh, I mean, I think that depends on the person. And the reason I say that because, I mean, for me, I was the type of player to where I want to do everything perfect. And I understand that, you can never play a perfect game. But at the same time, I wanted to make sure that I was at my absolute best or feeling my absolute best. And I understand that going into and going into an NFL game throughout the course of the season, you're not going to always physically feel at your best, but you still have that confidence that, you know what, even though I may not be feeling my best, my body and my mind can still come together and get it done. You know what I mean? I can do what I'm supposed to do and perform how I'm supposed to perform. But it got to a point where my game was all about, my arms and my punch. And the minute I couldn't do that the way I wanted to do it without not feeling any type of pain, I said, listen, man, this is not for me no more. Because again, I wasn't the strongest guy. So I just knew my length and my reach and my punch was everything I had. And the minute, my tricep tendon tears kind of took that away. It kind of limited me from, really playing the way I once played. And I knew that, hey, it may be time for me to reconsider. And was it hard? I mean, it was hard, but one thing about the film never lies, man. I mean, we have a saying as players, in the NFL, the eye in the sky never lies, man. And even though I still had the athletic ability, I just couldn't play the game the way I wanted to play the game before the injuries. And it's really hard to adjust your game playing offensive line. Like certain positions, you can adjust your game. Like I think wide receiver, you can go from a deep threat to being a possession receiver. I mean, again, you may not want to, but you can adjust to your skill set. As far as where you're at that stage of your career. But offensive line, it's hard to do that. I mean, if you're not, if you're not an overly big, massive guy, which I never was, and I wasn't, strong as an ox, where my game was all about using my length of my arms. I mean, the minute those started to give out on me, it's like, man, I mean, again, I don't know what I can do because, I mean, I can't gain weight and I can't get any stronger than I am. You know what I mean? So that's when I had to, reconsider. So I don't really have any advice. I guess what I can say is it's about just, knowing who you are and just being able to come to the realization and just asking yourself, I'm happy with the type of person or guy I'm seeing on the film each and every week.
That's true. Yeah. I know Sam has one last question he wanted to ask you.
All right, so we got a final one. From being a Texans player, I assume you have been keeping up with what's going on and everything. Mm-hmm. In the Deshaun Watson stuff, we touched on it briefly earlier. Who has the leverage? And if he does get traded, where do you see him fitting well?
Oh, man, so the leverage is, it's tough because I would say this. Houston, to me, has a little bit more leverage. Not a lot. Mm-hmm. Only reason I say that because he's still under contract. So, even though he has a no trade clause to where, if Houston trades him, he gets to decide, no, I don't want to go there, or yes, I'll go there. But still, at the end of the day, like Houston has a little bit more leverage than him just because he's still under contract. But the thing about it is, I think a lot of his money has been paid to him already. You know what I mean? Like he received a large lump sum of signing bonus up front. So to where I don't think it's going to hurt him to the degree that it will hurt, a lot of other players that may not have received that type of signing bonus up front. Like to where Houston, I think, paid out, I want to say at least, if not half, the majority of that contract already, you know what I mean, in a lump sum payment with the signing bonus. So I feel like, I mean, if he holds out all through training camp, it's going to cost him. But I mean, for a guy that has made the majority of his money in that contract, I mean, it's not really. I mean, it's like a drop in the bucket, man. You know what I mean? As far as the fines to the amount of money he's already made. So, again, I think this is going to go the distance. I think Houston's going to end up trading him anyway because I think Deshaun is willing to go the distance. As far as where I see him at, I mean, I think listen, I think the only team. Well, there's a few teams.
Yeah.
I say this. I don't see him getting traded before the draft. But
That's
if
fair,
he
yeah.
does get traded before the draft, it would have to be teams that have a lot of draft capital. You know what I mean? To where Houston feels like, you know what? We know it's going to be hard to replace a guy like him, but at least we have the draft capital to maneuver around doing so. If he gets traded after the draft, that's when it gets dicey. You know what I mean? But I know, again, I'm not trying to be biased, but I know a destination he has said. I think the Dolphins are a really good
That's what I said.
destination for. I really do. And
Yeah.
honestly, if I'm the Texans, I know you don't want to get rid of Deshaun Watson, but I know it may look silly going back to the Dolphins, knowing that, you know, knowing how Bill O'Brien got fleeced from the Dolphins and so forth. But I mean, again, it's a new management, and I'm still the believer. Listen, I like Tua. I think Tua is going to be a good NFL quarterback. I just think it needs time. You know what I mean? If I'm the Texans, I mean, hey, I try to get as much picks from the Miami Dolphins as I can, and again, I'm taking Tua. And listen, I understand it's not Deshaun Watson, but I just feel like he has a ceiling to where he can reach that level that we have seen from Deshaun Watson. If I'm Houston, I'm saying, listen, Miami, I have a disgruntled player who doesn't want to show up. Give me Tua. Give me some draft capital, and we'll make it happen, man.
And they got 2 firsts and 2 seconds too. I said that before. I said Miami, if they really want it, because if they want it, they have the best package. They have, and who wouldn't want a franchise QB like Watson? It would just level him up, and they are a playoff contender team. So I think that makes perfect sense. If it was a place to go, I think if Miami's interested, definitely connection there. The only thing I'm worried about is the Texans. Do you think they will do them like Detroit did Calvin Johnson, where it was like, if you don't play, those years don't go away. You have to play. You just not sort of. I guess it was active time. You think they will hold on to him and be petty and be like, we're not going to trade you to any team. We're not going to, give you to competition.
Well, see, the thing about it is with the Calvin Johnson situation, he retired. I don't see Deshaun Watson retire. Listen, I know Deshaun I know Deshaun had threatened that, but I think it's going to get to a point where Houston's going to have to realize, like, listen, we don't have anybody else to trot out there because I don't know who the backup quarterback is. I know at one time it was AJ McCarron, but I don't think he's even on the roster now. I mean, the Texans. So it's like, at some point you have to start figuring out a backup plan. And I just feel like, again, it's going to be hard to replace Deshaun Watson. But if you need to tell me I can get a quarterback who probably before his hip injury and Tua Tagovailoa was going to be the number 1 overall, player drafted. You know what I mean? If not number 1, I mean, again, he's going to be right behind Joe Burrow. You know what I mean? Which he was, but just,
the certainty.
3 spots down. I mean, if I get a player like that who's still going to be under a rookie deal for 3 more seasons, and then I can get, a lot of draft capital, as far as some first-round picks and some second-round picks, why not do it? But again, I understand if I'm Houston, you don't want to give up a player like that, and I know you want to wait until the last possible minute because you don't want to make it a precedence for your team. But at some point, man, like I said, if again, you don't have no one else to trot out there as your backup quarterback, you have to make a move sooner than later, in my opinion.
Absolutely, and Tua did look good against Kansas City. It's really about who blinks first, and I think Texans need to go up, especially with new GM there, former Patriots GM. How long do you want to drag this out? I mean, this is how you're going to start. Do you really want to start wasting some years, wasting some time? Because Watson made it clear this is not mechanical. Like, this is not going to work. So it's really like how long is it going to take to face reality? Yeah. But I want to thank you for coming on our show. We could actually make this a 2-part special series. We might. Honestly, it's been a pleasure talking with you. I know we kept but I really enjoyed our conversation. All the insight, man. It was great talking to you and getting that insight.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Stories were great.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Now we want to get me and Seb, we're going to touch on the Creating Young Minds Undiscovered League real quick, our battle. But I want to thank you again, Rashad Butler, for coming on our show.
No, thank you, man.
It was a pleasure.
I had a good time. I had a good time. Really did.
Appreciate it. And hopefully we'll see what happens with J.J. Watt and Deshaun Watson and see if you call it.
Let's see, and I hope so.
Yeah.
All right, so this on us Creating Young Minds Undiscovered League. Let me get the little boom boom thing right there. Boom. So on to the Undiscovered recap. Well, not recap. It's more of a debate given what's going on in Texas. But a quick little debate today is what player do you think has grown so far the most? And I'll say we've been covering them since November, December. So which player have you seen grow the most?
Yeah, there's a bunch, honestly. But like I'm gonna have to say Jarrett Henderson in my opinion. Just because listen, beginning of the season, he was like scouts were going, all right, he needs to develop into a team player more. He's to play both sides of the court. And from what we've seen, his stats have been going up. Like they started off great, but they've just been going up. So I feel like he's developing into like the most true player over there. And just watching him play, you see the little things every week get better.
Okay, I'm not gonna disagree with it because I did see him go like obviously from a key player to like a superstar player. So it's like scouts kept raving about him, him, talking about he's the best player on the floor. When I first started watching, Durham was getting a lot of attention. Given credit, I mean, he was hitting so many threes, like 10 threes, I think in a row.
Yeah.
Now the player I'm gonna go to is the one who I think had a bigger jump, and I apologize if I'm saying the name wrong. Bozovic. I was close. Bozovic. So he went from, I think, to me, to being like a role player to actually a very key player on the team, on an undiscovered team. He's a stretch guy, stretch big, grabs rebounds and shooting. But one place I feel like he improved well is also defending. I think he's doing a better job staying in front of guys, and he's also grabbing more boards too. He was grabbing boards before, but wasn't much. And I think he's became a key center to that piece with that dynamic duo we talked about last week with him and Henderson. I think that he has grown to be a key player. I think it's a lot bigger of a jump than Henderson, who's still like a star player, is getting more attention now than I think Baza has actually taken a jump as a player.
No, he honestly has. That whole league's just phenomenal.
Very upcoming slept on talent. If you guys want to check it out, we have the link down there below, creatingyoungminds.uscreen.io. That's zero.
Yep.
All right, so if you guys want to check it out, they usually play the weekends. But given what's going on in Texas, things might be, on hold for a little bit, but we will keep you updated. But until then, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. For our viewers to stay with us, thank you. Yeah. Very interesting debate. That was like probably one of my favorite shows, to be honest with you.
That was a good one.
One of my favorite guests. But until next week, we'll see you again at the same time, Saturday 12 o'clock. Until then, take care. And I'm going to do this little voice thing until I get this thing that's like